investigation team in the place. Going dark.
Hidden within the rolling hills of Dorset's Isle of Purbeck lies Tyneham village, a place often described as Britain's most haunted lost village. Its quiet, ruined buildings and preserved interiors tell a story that stretches back over 1,000 years, one of continuity, sudden disruption, and a lingering sense that the past has never truly left. The origins of Tyneham can be traced back to early settlement in the surrounding valley, with evidence suggesting occupation since at least the Iron Age. For centuries, the village remained a small but stable rural community, largely untouched by the rapid changes seen elsewhere in England. At its heart stood St Mary's Church, a place of worship dating back to at least the 15th century, alongside a manor house and a scattering of cottages that housed generations of farming families. Life in Tyneham before the Second World War was simple, defined by routine, tradition and a strong sense of community. By the early 20th century, around 2,000 residents lived in the village, many belonging to families that had been there for generations. Without modern conveniences such as electricity, daily life revolved around farming, the church and the village school. Despite its isolation, Tyneham was a place of stability and continuity, a rare example of rural England preserved in time. This continuity was abruptly shattered in November 1943 during the height of the Second World War. The British government requisitioned the village as part of the preparations for the D-Day landings, requiring a training ground for troops. The residents of Tyneham were given just 28 days to leave their homes. They departed under the belief that their absence would be temporary, many locking their doors and leaving personal belongings behind. Unfortunately, that day never came, and after the war, the land was purchased by the government in 1948 and incorporated permanently into the military training ranges. The villagers were dispersed, their community dissolved, and Tyneham was left to fall silent. Today, Tyneham stands as a powerful symbol of wartime sacrifice and loss. It is not merely an abandoned village, but a place frozen in a specific moment, 1943, where the echoes of everyday life seem to linger in every empty room and crumbling wall. Visitors often remark on the unusual stillness of the valley, a silence that feels deeper than the absence of sound alone. One of the most significant buildings within Tyneham is St Mary's Church. Built mostly from local limestone rubble, the oldest parts of the church date back to 1190. For generations, the church was run by the Bond family. Dennis Bond between 1742 and 1795, his son William Bond between 1795 and 1852, and Nathaniel Bond until 1889. The church was the only building preserved and later repaired by the Ministry of Defence. It now hosts exhibitions detailing the history of the village. It was restored in the 1990s and 2003 and became a Grade 2 listed building in 2020. Tyneham School is a 19th century schoolhouse which operates today as a museum. Built in 1856 and restored in 1974. When in operation, it hosted roughly 50 to 60 children from the village and farms close by. The school consists of just one room, and children between the ages of 4 and 14 were all taught together. Education in the 20s was strict. Children weren't allowed to talk and would have their knuckles rapped if they had poor handwriting. Children were expected to learn joined-up handwriting from the start. Every day, the school day would start with children saluting the Union flag. Due to declining numbers, the school closed in 1932, prior to the village evacuation. Today, it stands as a reminder of education in the 1920s and 30s, and the hub of a village now abandoned. Tyneham Post Office was located in Post Office Row, also known as 3 the Row. It served as both the village shop and post office. Records show that several people lived and worked there over the years. The building was tiny and busy, selling things such as bacon, tea, cheese, sweets, sewing supplies and household essentials. Villagers described it as so cramped that 3 customers at a time would produce a traffic jam. The telephone was kept privately in the kitchen for telegrams, though villagers often heard the messages anyway. Today, the remains of the post office are still among the most photographed ruins in Tyneham. The shells of the cottages stand still, creating one of the village's eeriest locations. Shepherd's Cottage was known as For the Row in Tyneham village. Historical records show it was traditionally occupied by the village shepherd and his family. The cottage is most strongly connected with the Lucas family, one of the families recorded as living in Shepherd's Cottage before the evacuation. The cottage sat at the end of the row next to the post office, labourer's cottage and the old schoolhouse. The home was linked to workers responsible for looking after the sheep, managing livestock from the estate and working the hills around Wheelbarrow Bay and the Purbeck countryside. Because Tyneham was a farming estate village, many cottages were tied directly to specific jobs. Today the cottage is a roofless shell, but visitors can still walk through it. Information boards inside explain who lives there, provide old family photographs and details of village life before 1943. The building known as Labourer's Cottage was part of the Row in Tyneham and housed estate and farm workers connected to the village's agricultural life. Historical records identified several residents over the years, including the Hansford family and the Miller family. The residents typically worked as farm labourers, shepherds, estate workers and general workers supporting the village community. Life inside the cottage would be basic, heated by an open fire and shared by entire families. Like many homes in Tyneham, it reflected the hard but close-knit life of a rural community before evacuation in 1943. When the army took over Tyneham during World War II, families left belongings behind and homes were abandoned almost overnight. So we've got here various things that were found. By the spring of 1944, the South Coast had become an armed camp in preparation for D-Day. 11 million acres of land, much of it farmland, became airfields, training grounds, camps, and munitions dumps. So the D-Day landings became the largest naval task force in history. On June 6, 1944, an armada of 7,000 boats, 156,000 troops and 54,000 vehicles left the south coast for beaches of Normandy. It's said that Dorset has been the home of the tank since 1916, when it was developed by the British and tested at Lulworth. The tank was first used during the First World War at the Battle of the Somme. Ultimately, Tyneham Village occupies a unique space between history and legend. It is a place where documented fact and personal experience intertwine, where the tragedy of wartime displacement has created not only a physical ghost village but an emotional one. Whether viewed as a historical site, a memorial, or a location of paranormal intrigue, Tyneham continues to captivate those who walk its empty streets. In its silence, Tyneham tells a story that is both deeply human and quietly unsettling, a reminder that while buildings may fall into ruin, the echoes of the lives once lived within them can endure long after the people themselves have gone. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope to see you again on the next video.